Yes, as I said, I'm Brian Drinkwater, and as you can see, here's some facts about my career. There's a reference there to COBA, that's the Commercial and Online Broadcast Association, which has members from Amazon, ITV, Sky, Viacom, who run Channel 5, etc. And all of my jobs have involved technology project management. I co-own Kyle Partnership, where I'm the consulting partner, and I'm also an executive producer in film, a member of the Professional Lighting and Sound Association, a global association, which, as you might imagine, is based behind Morrison's over that side of the car park. I'm a partner with a company called AI Caramba, and also a company called Broadcast Intelligence, who both work globally in metadata-based media industries. So, my talk today is titled You But Better, Addressing the Digital Skills Gap, but it's not necessarily about the skills, it's about the gap. So, some of my thoughts on the reasons for it, including some very uncomfortable truths that I believe lead to the perception of a digital skills gap. And as I've said, I can promise you dancing goats at the end of the talk, so make sure you can see the screen. And that's certainly worth waiting for. So, as Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella said, digital technology today is not about tech companies doing innovation, it's about the world doing innovation with technology. And in my opinion, that's more about human interaction and perhaps innovation. Over the last 30 years, I've witnessed state education in England fundamentally turn into factory farming, which I'll come on to later. And as a society, it appears to me that being entitled in this country these days means having a roof over your head and a bed to sleep in, knowing where your next meal is coming from, and having sufficient income to pay your bills, which all used to be accepted as absolute basics for the majority of the population. And you've seen some of the stats up there. But keeping this on topic, beyond that, there's a massive disconnect between government, education, and industry, which are all ultimately people. And there are thousands of examples I could have used, but let's illustrate this specifically with an issue in the northwest of England, so we don't upset anyone in the southeast, from an industry that I work in. So back in 2009, Nottingham University released research for government that said all recording studios were dying off at an incredible rate. Here in 2024, some 15 years later, that industry is dead, apart from a handful of owner-operated studios that don't want or need any staff. It's a result of the digital revolution. Meanwhile, further and higher education courses continue to offer music technology production courses, which clearly appeal to young children and provide skills in many areas that can translate to other jobs, but they certainly don't, in the northwest of England, provide skills required by the live events industry, which continues to grow massively across England and particularly in the northwest, yet requires a skill set that in live environments is vastly different to studio production. I know this because one of the leading UK live production tech companies receives about 50 plus applications a week from students that say they're simply not going to employ based on a technology production qualification. The company tried engaging with local colleges and universities to make the courses more relevant, but they simply weren't interested. They said, oh no, no time, too busy, too complicated, health and safety. So the company chose to address the skills gap themselves. Their tactic is to have different groups of kids, aged 14 plus, each on placements for a fortnight throughout almost every week of the year, in what is a highly digital-focused factory and office environment with over 200 staff and hundreds of freelancers. Mentored by younger employees, these kids get a taste of the real world and know what to expect if that's the career path they'd like to follow. It's through human, real contact. Another example is a company from Bristol called Stage Electrics, who run free-to-attend showcase events like the one in a couple of weeks at Brighton Centre. They're not only for their existing customers and the entertainment industry, but also for students, as they see this as a way of bringing manufacturers and their equipment together for kids to see, to know what's going to happen in the future. And again, through human contact. These two examples are what small and medium businesses could be doing, and perhaps there are some of you out there that are doing this, but on the whole, they choose not to, as they don't see it as their responsibility to educate kids. So my question to any small or medium-sized business is, why not? In my mind, not doing this is effectively cutting off your supply chain, and I really don't understand it. Although I should. Earlier this year, a report was published which showed 58% of school staff thought that parents were spending more time on electronic devices than they were with their own children. Meanwhile, 54% of parents don't think that school readiness of their own children was their responsibility. So I guess if more than half of parents don't think that the kids are their responsibility, future employers would be even less interested. It's a point of view. So we're back to the digital revolution again. It's a revolution where now by age 2, most kids can operate a smartphone. By age 6, most kids will have viewed pornography, except in families where their parents fall into the category of deluded. And according to Ofcom, by age 16, all kids will own a smartphone, even if they live in poverty and don't have a bed to sleep in. Although a third of their parents will be paying their phone bill until those kids are in their mid-30s. So, for the purposes of identifying generations in the rest of my talk, I'm carving out 4 generational groups for reference. 50 plus, the dinosaurs. 35 plus, old people. 20 plus, workforce. And 5 plus, learners. So back in the early 80s, Western society was told that the digital revolution would lead to more free time for everyone, with all of us being better connected as humans and having increased ways of communicating with each other, a digital utopia, if you like. If you're a dinosaur, like me, then you'll have witnessed the full effect of the digital revolution and chosen to what extent you'd like to be part of it or not. As a state-educated child from a modest family income, I chose to be part of it. And for me, that meant that at age 8, I saw my first computer, the VIC-20, and was shown something that we now call a spreadsheet, or Simply Calc. At 9 years old, I was taken on a school trip to a computer company and shown a machine like this that could send messages typed on a screen to another computer anywhere else in the world. I think you call that email these days. So, any questions, they asked? Yes, I said. Why don't you just pick up the phone and speak to the person? It's quicker. Stony silence was the response, and we were moved on to something else, probably some big loop of tape whizzing around. It's a question I've needed to ask people of the workforce generation far more recently. I had a 25-year-old employee refusing to telephone a colleague in another office because he claimed he didn't know how to. And when he was finally persuaded to use it, he heard a voicemail message at the end of the line and just went... He literally froze in horror. So here's the problem. Regardless of social background, we have a workforce armed with the skills to use some of the highest and even lowest forms of technology, yet many of them have little concept of the reasoning for or application of it in the workforce. The only person I phone is my mum. I email them. They're like, seriously, what are we doing as a society? I mean, once this guy had mastered basic telephone skills, you couldn't get him off the phone. He had far fewer emails to deal with, and he could sort out problems in seconds. And he built real human connections with people at the other end of the phone, and I call that a result. That certainly isn't a digital skills gap, it's a human interaction gap. So if we're not setting an example to the workforce generation that the low-tech solution can often be better, they're going to default to the digital solution, because that's all they've ever known. And for those that have contact with the learner generation, it's time to persuade them that a simple phone call is a beneficial way of communicating with another person, rather than messaging, which is frequently misinterpreted, or video calling, which, according to that nonsense up there, is medically proven to cause stress, anxiety, and burnout to us poor little humans. So, on to old people, the social media generation, if you like. Either since leaving school or since birth, you've had access to the World Wide Web. We call it the internet these days. You may have had access to MySpace, Friends Reunited, or other long-gone platforms. You'll also be aware how we dinosaurs operate too. Thank you. And you'll get that if you Google something, it isn't necessarily true. And you'll also be aware that most of the content on the internet isn't regulated. So you'd probably not be surprised that if you type the word Eastbourne into X, which you probably knew as Twitter, you'll see adverts like this, which are posted multiple times every hour by entrepreneurs who don't mark these posts as advertisements and most likely aren't contributing any tax to the UK economy. But you'd probably be concerned that your kids of the learner generation are accessing this unregulated content too, unless they want 95% pure Coke. Although you should probably be more concerned for the lone kids I used to see looking completely out of place post-lockdown on commuter trains, armed with their burner phones and clearly running county lines for those entrepreneurs we were speaking about. You're the generation that can currently make the biggest difference to society, as you know what's gone before and what's coming up next, although you probably do need to get your head out of your phone. You're also the ones that have lived through what I call the decline in state education in England. So let's go back even before a dinosaur like me. GCSEs replaced O-levels and CSEs. Previously, 20% of students did O-levels, the next 40% did CSEs, and the 40% after that didn't do any exams. They didn't need to. You leave school on Friday, you get a job on Monday. They'll train you. Perfect, great. Plenty of jobs around, and employers will be training you. Not a problem. GCSE was introduced in 1988. I know it well. I did it that year with John Craven telling me all about it. And it was expected that every learner would take some GCSEs to level up education of all school leavers, so they potentially had some form of qualification, which is absolutely great idea and concept. Roll on through subsequent governments, this is the sad bit, all wanting to make their stamp on education and send increasing piles of money to their mates in the private sector, whilst increasing their own personal wealth, regardless of the colour of their political party that they represented, which is a whole other story altogether, but gets us to the current state-funded education system in England. Let's backtrack for a minute, because I really enjoyed school. That school, it's a housing estate now, but I used to go there. There was no pressure. I could develop my own pace. Oh, I've tapped my microphone, sorry. I met people from all sorts of different backgrounds, both socially and educationally, from the SWATs in the classroom to disruptors and everybody in between. It was fun. My husband hated school, although he liked college, but overall agrees with what I'm going to tell you next. As a dinosaur, the first formal nationally monitored exams I took were my GCSEs at 16 in my 5th year. What is now known as Year 12. It's the current system that makes it clear that 75% of a school leaver's life has been in formal education. Prior to that, I went to a free local authority-operated nursery school, then the free local authority-operated primary school, all walking distance from my home. And at 16, I wanted to join something called a youth training scheme in theatre, but that was a bit too far out for my parents, who went, oh, that's for losers. So I ended up in college. 4 local authority-operated sixth form colleges available to me. I just went to the one my mates went to. Perfect. Then I got a place at university, and the fees were paid for by the local authority. I also had 2 part-time jobs, because I'm quite a busy person, both paying national insurance into the system, and I left university with 0 debts and 50 quid in the bank, which is about a fortune back in 1992. Since then, I've continually worked and paid more than my fair share of tax, national insurance, and VAT back into the economy, covering the cost of that education and further benefiting the economy with academic and social skills and life experiences I've gained through my educational journey. Let's compare that with England in 2024. Prospective parents sometimes work an education plan for a child before they have one. Under 5 age childcare can potentially cost more than the majority of parents' residual income. And parents have to apply for a primary school place, hope there is one, and hope it is local to them. By age 11, kids undergo statutory Key Stage 2 testing that often requires a knowledge of constructs that even some university professors believe are not required until undergraduate level at university. The results of these are absolutely crucial to the school, not the child, because it's all about the Ofsted rating. State schools are more than likely owned by public-private partnerships that control how they operate their sites, which are often falling into disrepair, outdated, unfit for purpose, and carry a mountain of corporate debt. Most academy schools are obsessively operated like factory farms on a results-driven basis, despite presenting this to the public as student-centred learning. 40% of newly qualified teachers have left the profession entirely within 4 years of graduating or leave the country for good. Since 2022, experienced teachers have been leaving the profession at a higher rate than ever before. And this isn't because of the pandemic, it's because of the dissatisfaction with their jobs. Further and higher education, which has to exist as an entirely commercial model, can only afford to run courses based on them appealing to students, rather than offering courses that are relevant to what's required by the country to support social and economic growth. And if a learner chooses medicine as a study option, they'll likely leave with a qualification and £100,000 worth of debt, should they choose to work for the NHS. As a junior doctor, they'll earn an average of £37,000 a year before tax. And that's not far off the salary of the guy who wouldn't use the phone 4 years after learning to make phone calls. And he certainly wasn't saving anybody's life. In my opinion, in 2024, the state education system in England is constructed on flawed analytics and primarily operated for the benefit of PLCs, rather than learners, or as some prefer to call it, small state. I just call it broken. There's much that needs changing, and I don't have the answers to all of that, but what I do have, though, is Eastbourne DigiFest, and I hope to meet plenty of new faces here today. At last year's DigiFest, I met local people from all parts of the creative, digital and technology sectors from East Sussex and beyond, including those in further education who are actively involving themselves with industry and business to make their courses more relevant and even tailored to the needs of the country, and higher education that's seeking out, supporting and developing innovation locally, nationally and globally. I also met people who are innovators themselves, operating small and micro businesses across East Sussex, even in my sector. There's 3 of them. One of those is Seb Cox. He's an animator, filmmaker and physics genius. He's workforce generation and previously taught in secondary schools, funnily enough, for 4 years, until he got disillusioned with the system too. Fair enough, he's since been working successfully in universities and colleges in Sussex and Brighton, having transitioned into further and higher education. He's created a site called Go Physics, and it's a great product and learning tool for those studying GCSE physics. It's in a format that appeals to the learner generation, some of it in TikTok style, a bit like this. It says here, turning up volume.
It's time for a scary physics question. Not really, we're going to make it easy. Calculate the time taken for the speed of the car to change from 0 meters per second to 28 meters per second at its maximum acceleration. First of all, we've been told that the maximum acceleration of the car is 20 meters per second squared. We've got that, right? Let's write it down. Now we're just going to assume that the acceleration of this car is 20 meters per second squared. Now we're going to use the equation where we've got our change in velocity divided by time is equal to acceleration. If we know that the final velocity is 28 meters per second and the initial is 0, then our change in velocity is going to be 28 meters per second because it went from 0 to 28. Easy. We also have been given the acceleration, which is 20. Ooh, now here's the weird bit. We've got to try and find time, but the equation doesn't equal time. The equation equals acceleration. So how are you going to get time? Well, now whenever you've got an equation with the value you want underneath a fraction, that simply means that we've got to times both sides of that equation by that value. Whenever you see that, we're going to times everything up. It's like you're bringing everything up that is underneath. If we times both sides, in this case by time, we will get our acceleration, which is 20, times time to get 20t is equal to 28. Lastly, to get the t on its own, we now need to divide both sides by that 20 to have that t on its own, because 20 divided by 20 is 1, and 1 times t is t. That means that t is equal to 28 divided by 20. And hey, presto, there's our answer. That wasn't too scary after all. For more resources to make physics easy, head to gophysics.co.uk. I'll see you there.
There we go. So, what about the GCSE system itself? 66% of written GCSE exam papers are marked by, again, factory farms of tens of thousands of assessors. They randomly get shown anonymous scans of individual exam question responses rather than having the context of a learner's full exam paper. With the government introducing AI into marking, we're going to see more of this approach. Having seen many individual subject GCSE learning sites, I thought about going beyond this to create a digital solution that could potentially reverse engineer the whole GCSE system for the benefit of learners and their life beyond secondary education, with relevant fundamental skills in what used to be STEM but are now STEAM subjects: science, technology, arts, engineering and maths, that acknowledge integrating arts into learning expands the benefit of hands-on education and collaboration by promoting creativity and curiosity at the core. And that's when I came up with my PET, or Personalised Education Tool. It's a platform-neutral, web-based portal designed for smartphones to support learners of all abilities. They can get a competitive advantage to the full criteria of to fulfil the criteria of attaining GCSE grades, but more importantly, it's a tool that offers growth to individual learners, and it can ultimately be applied more widely in society and embedded through personal learning. And this can be particularly relevant to those who are neurodiverse or don't thrive in the current education system, rather than learners simply being able to regurgitate information from a GCSE syllabus to achieve grades. The purpose of the PET is to feed learners' brains with multiple ways to achieve this. It's through videos, animations, interactive questions, quizzes and flashcards. Learners manage the planning, monitoring and evaluation of their own learning via a reverse-engineered version of the GCSE marking system. Now, the PET isn't intended to replace classroom, but through continual self-confidence check, the PET supports learners by delivering and adapting experiences and learning styles that just suit them. Question by question, answer by answer, it learns and learns with them. Finally, whilst we're offered startup capital to fund this from the USA in a heartbeat, we decided it's a project for social good, rather than immediately for the kind of profitability that has seen the English education system end up where it is today. So where are we doing it? Here exclusively in East Sussex, and we're working actively with and looking for more innovative people in our local area to progress the project. Are we mad? Yes, no, probably. Most commercial enterprise only sees growth indicated by pound signs, rather than being socially responsible too. So are we doing it for the right reasons? Yes, absolutely, as there's no other comparable product out there interested in developing learners' skills at GCSE level beyond passing the exam. As someone wiser than me once said, just do something, anything. And I think you should all do that too. You, but better. Although in fairness, I've heard a local version of that, from the motivational workforce generation mum to her primary school kid in Polegate, where I live, just the other day. Make of that what you will. The majority, it's Polegate. The majority of humans have 2 eyes, 2 ears and 1 mouth. Fundamentally, we're designed for 80% receiving information and 20% transmitting. So if people of all generations are armed with context, emotional intelligence and cultural intelligence, and we're all communicating with each other, it's possible to bridge any perceived skills gap. And whilst we're talking about the impact of AI, a tool that's been around since the 1960s, it's worth remembering that it is a tool, which is what Tom said downstairs earlier. Predominantly, it's used to support humans with dull administrative tasks. And it currently requires detailed human inputs to produce results. In other words, communication. Right, I'm going to end this talk with a piece of work created by one of my business partners, Matt Blakemore. He can't be here today because he's got another gig. I mean, I did tell him DigiFest was better, but he just wasn't having any of it. And he's chairing it, apparently, so whatever. Anyway, there's an outfit called the EBU. Now, Matt's just joined the old people generation and is a Eurovision Song Contest fan. He was asked to create a generative AI song and video for the EBU, who are the people that organise and run Eurovision. It was to demonstrate to them what's currently possible using existing online tools and a laptop, nothing else, and of course human input to communicate with the AI. And whilst he presents it in Amsterdam, we also have it here at DigiFest. As background to this, although the cloud technology to this costs £600 to make, Matt's got 10 years experience working in AI, and his human input and time are what made it possible, and that cost far, far more than 600 quid. So, roll the dancing goats.
I'm the underdog from a country you can't pronounce, with a sob story so tragic even Johnny Logan would bounce. Lost my dignity in a freak glitter explosion. Now I'm here to win with Lorene's moves in slow motion. Wind machines on turbo, my hair's defying gravity. Pyrotechnics set to fuego, pray for my longevity. The lyrics are nonsense, but who cares, it's all for show. We're Burka silver boots, still the glow. Glitter tsunami, pleasure show. We're drowning in sequence tonight. Glitter tsunami, boom, riding waves of disco light. From London to Malmo, we're all going insane. In this sparkler's Bennett's glad, Mona skin up prove her fame. Glitter tsunami, let it wash over you. Our EBU's glitzy stew. My backup dancers, just a troupe of acrobatic goats. They form human pyramids while I hit Conchita notes. Got more key changes than Salvador has feelings, and a gimmick wilder than Nemo's good wheelings. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed members of the EBU, prepare for a spectacle that'll make Lordy seem subdued. Where Netta's chicken dance meets Haktari's wildest schemes, and Ryback's fairy tale violin haunts all our dreams. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed members of the EBU, prepare for a spectacle that'll make Lordy seem subdued. Where Netta's chicken dance meets Haktari's wildest schemes, and Ryback's fairy tale violin haunts all our dreams. Key change. Behold, as I felt a note so high it cracks the crystal mic, while my goats form the Eurovision heart, a sight you'll surely like a satellite. LED screens flash messages to vote or else. As I warble about love, transcending Brexit itself. Glitter tsunami, amor, pleasure, show. We're drowning in sequence tonight. Glitter tsunami, boom, riding waves of disco light. From London to Malmo, we're all going insane. In this sparkly spandex clad, Mona skin approve her fame. Glitter tsunami, let it wash over you. Our EBU's glitzy stew. From box fizz skirt, ripped to epic sax guy's groove. We've seen it all, yet every May we still approve. So text your votes now before Bjorkman intervenes in this glitter tsunami, where camp reigns supreme. Glitter tsunami, amor, pleasure, show. We're drowning in sequence tonight. Glitter tsunami, boom, riding waves of disco light. From London to Malmo, we're all going insane. In this sparkly spandex clad, Mona skin approve her fame. Glitter tsunami, let it wash over you. Our EBU's glitzy stew.
There we go. That's you but better. Thanks for watching and listening. And if I can bribe you with a pen or a business card, come and talk to me afterwards.